Jihan Lee was fixing his coffee maker when the knock came. 3 soft taps on his apartment door, so quiet he almost missed them over the humming of the machine. He looked at the wall clock. Nearly midnight. Nobody visited him this late anymore. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked to the door. The security screen showed his neighbor from across the hall. Kira something. He never learned her full name. She was one of those tall aliens with skin that looked like broken glass. Right now her skin was showing dark blue colors. Jihan remembered reading somewhere that blue meant sadness for her kind. Just a moment, he called out, unlocking the 3 different locks on his door. Living in Neo-Sol meant being careful, even in the good neighborhoods. Kira stood in the hallway, her hands folded in front of her. She was about 7 feet tall, thin like a tree branch, with large black eyes that seemed to see everything. Her crystalline skin caught the hallway lights and threw them back in soft patterns. She wore a simple gray dress that went down to her knees. "Hello, Mr. Lee," she said in perfect Korean, though her voice had that musical quality all Vorthax had. "I am sorry to bother you so late. My name is Kira Velnathi. I live in apartment 4B, I know," Jihan said. "Is everything okay? You look—" He paused, not sure how to say someone looks sad when their emotions showed on their skin. "Troubled?" she finished for him. "Yes, I suppose I am. May I come in? I have something important to ask you." Jihan hesitated. He had moved to this building 2 years ago specifically because nobody bothered him here. The mix of humans and aliens meant everyone minded their own business. But Kira looked desperate and her skin was getting darker. "Sure," he said, stepping back. "Come in." His apartment was small and neat. A couch, a table, some books, and his workstation where he fixed computers and other tech for people. Nothing fancy, but it was his space. Kira walked in carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something. She sat on the edge of his couch when he pointed to it. "Would you like some coffee?" Jihan asked. "Or tea? I think I have tea somewhere." "Water would be nice, thank you." He brought her a glass and sat in the chair across from her. Up close, he could see the stress lines around her eyes. Even aliens showed worry the same way humans did. "So what can I help you with?" he asked. Kira held the water glass but did not drink. "Mr. Lee, you used to be a soldier, yes? Before you became a computer repairman?" Jihan felt his stomach tighten. "How do you know that?" "I asked the building manager about you. I needed to know if you could be trusted." She leaned forward. "My husband died 6 months ago." "I'm sorry," Jihan said. He remembered seeing the funeral flowers outside her door. "I should have said something then, but you keep to yourself." "I understand. Many soldiers do after they come home." Kira's skin shifted to a lighter blue. "My husband was also a soldier in a way. He was a scientist working for the Federation military. His name was Park Dae-ho." The name meant nothing to Jihan, but he nodded anyway. "When he died, he left behind some research. Very important research. But there is a problem." Kira set down her glass and looked directly at him. "The information is locked with security codes that need both human and Vorthak knowledge to open. And there are people looking for it. Dangerous people. What kind of people?" "The hegemony." Jihan felt ice in his veins. The hegemony had killed his squad 5 years ago on Europa Station. They were the reason he left the military and came here to hide. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because I need help. The research my husband left behind, it could change everything. But if the wrong people get it, it could destroy everything instead." Kira's skin began showing flecks of red along with the blue. "I have tried for months to find someone who knows both human and Vorthak computer systems. You are the only person in this city who has that knowledge and who is not connected to the military or the government." "How do you know what I know?" "Your work advertisements. You say you can fix any computer system, human or alien. That is not common." Jihan rubbed his face. He had learned alien computer systems during his military service, but that was supposed to be classified information. Apparently not classified enough. "Even if I could help you," he said, "why should I? I left that life behind. I don't want anything to do with military stuff anymore." Kira stood up slowly. "Because they killed your friends too." The words hit him like a punch. "What?" "My husband's research came from Europa Station. From the place where your squad died. They were guarding something important, Mr. Lee. They died protecting the same thing I am trying to protect now." Jihan stared at her. His squad had been told they were guarding mining equipment. Standard protection duty, but they all knew something was strange about that assignment. Too many guards for simple mining gear. Too much secrecy. What was it? He asked quietly. "Something left behind by a very old race. something that could give humanity the stars, or give the hegemony the power to take them away from everyone else. The room was quiet except for the humming of the coffee maker. Jihan thought about his dead friends, about the nightmares that still woke him up, about the reason he lived alone and fixed computers instead of building weapons. "If I help you," he said, "what happens then?" "Then we find out what your friends died for. And we make sure their sacrifice meant something." Kira's skin was now showing gold mixed with the blue. Hope, Jihan remembered. Gold meant hope for her people. He looked around his small, safe apartment. Then he thought about the 5 good soldiers who never came home from Europa Station, who died not knowing why they died. "Okay," he said, "I'll help you. But if this goes bad, if the hegemony finds us, I'm not running. Not again." Kira's skin brightened to pure gold. "Thank you, Mr. Lee. I promise you we will find the truth together." Outside, neither of them noticed the small surveillance drone that had been watching Kira's apartment for the past 3 weeks, or the way it immediately flew off into the night sky, heading toward the hegemony safe house on the other side of the city. The hunt had begun. The next morning, Jihan stood outside Kira's apartment with his tool bag and a cup of coffee. His hands shook slightly, not from the caffeine but from what he was about to do. He had not worked on military-grade systems since leaving the service. Kira opened the door before he could knock. Her skin showed pale green today, which he guessed meant nervous energy. "Good morning, Mr. Lee. Thank you for coming." Her apartment was the same size as his but felt completely different. Where his was simple and bare, hers was filled with strange objects and books. Crystal sculptures sat on every surface, and the walls were covered with pictures of dig sites and ancient ruins. "You collect old things," Jihan observed. "I study them. I was a xenoarchaeologist before I married Daeho. I specialized in finding artifacts from extinct civilizations." Kira moved to a desk covered with papers and small devices. "That is how I met my husband. He was investigating some unusual readings at one of my dig sites." She picked up a small black cube from the desk. "This is where he stored his research. Everything is locked inside this data core, but opening it requires 2 types of neural patterns working together." Jihan set down his coffee and examined the cube. It was made of materials he did not recognize, with connectors for both human and Vorthak interface systems. "Your husband was smart," he said. "This type of security means even if someone captures one of us, they cannot access the data alone." That was the idea. Daeho said the information was too dangerous for any one person or species to control. Jihan connected his portable computer to the cube and ran some basic scans. The security was unlike anything he had seen before. Human encryption mixed with Vorthak quantum locks and something else, something older. "There's a 3rd layer here," he said. "This isn't just human and Vorthak security. There's something else built into the system." Kira moved closer to look at his screen. She smelled like flowers and something metallic. Daeho mentioned finding unusual code patterns in the original artifact. He said they reminded him of the old stories. "What old stories?" "Vorthak legends speak of the first builders, a race that lived in this galaxy long before any of our current civilizations. They supposedly left behind gifts for those who proved worthy of finding them." Jihan looked at her skeptically. "You think this is related to alien fairy tales?" Kira's skin flashed red for a moment. Anger. "They are not fairy tales when you dig them up from planets that should not have them. I have found first builder artifacts on 7 different worlds. Mr. Lee, artifacts that are older than any known civilization and made from materials that should not exist." "Sorry, I didn't mean to insult your work." Jihan turned back to the computer. "Let's see what we can learn from this thing." They worked for 3 hours, taking turns connecting to the data core through neural interface links. The human side was complex but understandable. Standard military encryption with some advanced features. The Vorthak side was harder, requiring Kira to guide him through the quantum probability matrices that her people used for data storage. But the 3rd layer remained a mystery. Every time they got close to cracking it, the system would shift and change like it was alive. "It's learning," Jihan said, sitting back from the computer. "Every time we try something new, it adapts to our approach." Daeho mentioned that. He said the original artifact seemed to test people who tried to access it. Kira rubbed her temples. What if that is the point? What if we are not supposed to break into it, but prove we deserve to enter? How do we prove that? Before Kira could answer, her apartment's security system started beeping. Someone was in the building who did not belong there. That is impossible, Kira said, checking her security panel. The building has the best locks money can buy. Jihan was already packing up his equipment. Not if they have military-grade override codes. We need to go, now. The sound of heavy footsteps came from the hallway outside, multiple people moving in formation. The fire escape, Kira said, leading him toward her balcony. Wait. Jihan grabbed the data core and shoved it into his bag. We can't leave this behind. They climbed onto the balcony just as Kira's front door exploded inward. Through the sliding glass door, Jihan saw 3 figures in dark combat armor enter the apartment. They moved like soldiers, but their proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin. Hegemony troops. Down, he whispered, pushing Kira below the balcony railing. The hegemony soldiers spread through the apartment, searching methodically. One of them spoke in a clicking language that Jihan did not recognize, but their tone was clearly frustrated. They know we were here, Kira whispered. They can probably smell us. Jihan looked down. They were on the 4th floor. Too high to jump safely, but the building's design included maintenance platforms between floors. If they could reach the 3rd floor platform, can you climb? He asked. Kira nodded. Her crystalline skin was shifting to dark gray now. Fear. They carefully lowered themselves over the side of the balcony. Jihan went first, finding handholds on the building's decorative stonework. The maintenance platform was only about 6 feet down, but it felt like a mile. Just as Kira joined him on the platform, one of the soldiers appeared on her balcony above them. It looked down with compound eyes that seemed to see in all directions at once. The soldier raised a weapon that hummed with energy. Jihan recognized the sound from Europa Station. A plasma rifle, move! He shouted, grabbing Kira's hand. They ran along the narrow platform toward the building's corner. Behind them, the balcony railing exploded in a shower of sparks and melted metal. At the corner, Jihan saw their escape route. The building next door was only about 8 feet away with a wider platform at the same level. But the gap looked much bigger when you were planning to jump across it. I cannot make that jump, Kira said. Yes, you can. Your people have stronger legs than humans. You just need to trust yourself. More plasma bolts sizzled past them. The soldiers had found the maintenance access and were coming down. Together, Jihan said. On 3, 1, 2. They leaped across the gap. For a moment, Jihan was flying through the air 4 stories above the street, holding hands with an alien woman he barely knew, carrying stolen military secrets, and being shot at by enemy soldiers. He had never felt more alive. They landed hard on the other platform, rolling to absorb the impact. Kira's skin was bright white now. Shock and adrenaline. Are you hurt? Jihan asked. No, you? I'm fine. But we need to keep moving. They'll call for backup. They made their way down to the street level using the building's fire escape. Behind them, the hegemony soldiers were still trying to figure out how to follow them across the gap. Where do we go now? Kira asked as they reached the sidewalk. Jihan thought about it. They needed somewhere safe to work on the data core, somewhere the hegemony would not think to look. He also needed help from someone he could trust. I know someone, he said. Someone who might be able to help us understand what your husband found. They walked quickly through the early morning streets of Neo Sol, 2 unlikely partners carrying secrets that could change the galaxy. Above them, hegemony surveillance drones were already beginning their search pattern. The hunt was getting serious. Captain Nam Yunji was drinking tea when Jihan and Kira arrived at the small cafe in Old Seoul. She looked the same as always. Short black hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of posture that came from 20 years in the military. She wore civilian clothes, but Jihan could see the outline of body armor underneath her jacket. You look terrible, Jihan, she said as they sat down. And you brought a friend. This is Kira, the one I told you about on the phone. Jihan kept his voice low. The cafe was mostly empty, but they could not be too careful. Yunji studied Kira with professional interest. So you're the widow with the dangerous data. I have to say, when Jihan called me this morning, I thought he was finally having a breakdown. The data is real, Kira said quietly, and so is the danger. They found us at my apartment. Hegemony? Jihan nodded. 3 soldiers, military-grade equipment. They knew exactly where to look. Yunji's expression grew serious. That's not good. The hegemony doesn't waste resources on small targets. If they sent a full team after you, then what you have is more important than you know. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a music player. When she turned it on, The air around their table seemed to shimmer slightly. "Privacy field," she explained. "Now we can talk freely. Show me what you found." Jihan pulled out the data core and his portable computer. "We managed to crack the first 2 security layers, but there's a third one that keeps changing on us." He connected everything and showed Yoonji their progress. Her eyes widened as she saw the data structures. "This is architect technology," she said. "Who are the architects?" Jihan asked. Yoonji looked around the cafe once more, then leaned forward. 3 years ago, the Federation started finding ancient installations on dead worlds. Always the same pattern: underground facilities that are older than any known civilization, built with technology we can barely understand. We call the builders the architects because that's all they seem to have done. Built things and left them behind. "How many installations?" Kira asked. 17 that we know of. Maybe more. Each one contains technology that's centuries ahead of anything we have. The problem is, most of them are sealed. They only open for certain people under certain conditions. Jihan thought about the changing security on the data core. They test people. Exactly. The architects seem to have left behind some kind of selection process. They're looking for something specific, but we don't know what. Kira's skin shifted to thoughtful purple. In Vorthak legends, the first builders left gifts for those who proved worthy. But the stories always said the tests were different for each race. "That makes sense," Yoonji said. "We've found that architect facilities respond differently to different species. Some only open for humans, some for Vorthaks, some for other races. But we've never found one that required multiple species working together." She pointed at the data core. "Until now?" They spent the next hour working on the 3rd security layer. With Yoonji's help, they began to understand how the system worked. It was not just testing their ability to break codes. It was testing how well they could work together. "Try the sequence again," Yoonji said. "But this time, both of you need to be connected at the same time." Jihan and Kira put on the neural interface headsets and linked to the system together. Immediately, Jihan felt something strange. He could sense Kira's thoughts at the edges of his mind. Her way of thinking was different from humans, more visual, more connected to patterns and relationships. Together, they approached the 3rd security layer. This time, instead of fighting against the changing codes, they flowed with them. Kira's pattern recognition guided them through the shifting maze, while Jihan's logical thinking provided the framework. They needed to navigate it. The security layer opened like a flower blooming. Data flooded onto the screen. Star maps, technical specifications, and something that made all 3 of them stare in amazement. "It's a complete architect facility," Yoonji breathed. Location, access codes, everything. The facility was on a moon called Kepler 442c, about 40 light-years from Earth. The data showed it was much larger than any installation they had found before. "But look at this," Kira said, pointing to another section of the data. "The facility is not empty. There's something active inside it." The scans showed massive energy readings coming from deep within the installation. Whatever the architects had built there, it was still running after millions of years. "There's more," Jihan said, scrolling through the files. "Your husband's notes. He says the facility contains what he calls a civilization matrix, some kind of technology that can reshape matter and energy on a planetary scale." Yoonji whistled softly. "No wonder the hegemony wants this. With that kind of power, they could remake entire star systems to suit themselves. Or destroy them," Kira added darkly. Jihan kept reading through Park Daeho's notes. The scientist had been brilliant but also careful. He had hidden the most important information in encrypted personal logs that required Kira's biometric signature to open. "He knew this was dangerous," Jihan said. "Look at this entry from 2 weeks before he died." The log entry appeared on screen, written in both Korean and Vorthak script. The architects were not just advanced. They were testing us. Every facility, every artifact, every piece of technology they left behind, it's all part of a selection process that spans millions of years. They're looking for a species that can handle ultimate power without destroying themselves or others. So far, no single species has passed all the tests. But what if that's the point? What if they were looking for cooperation between species instead of dominance by one? "He figured it out," Kira said softly. "That's why he made the security system require both human and Vorthak access. He wasn't just protecting the data. He was completing the test." Yoonji stood up suddenly. "We need to move now. What's wrong?" Jihan asked. "I just got a priority alert." Hegemony ships are massing near the Kepler system. They know about the facility. Through the cafe window, they could see black vehicles pulling up outside. Hegemony ground forces moving fast and efficiently. How did they find us? Kira asked. They didn't, Yunji said grimly. They found me. I've been investigating architect sites for 3 years. They've probably been watching me the whole time, waiting to see what I would lead them to. She pulled out a military communicator. This is Captain Nam. Authorization code 77 Alpha. I need immediate extraction for 3 civilians, high priority. The response was immediate. Extraction team en route. Hold position for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, she told them. Can you download all the data? Jihan was already working. Almost got it. There's a lot here. Outside, the hegemony soldiers were setting up a perimeter. They moved with the precision of professionals who had done this many times before. They're not coming in, Yunji observed. They're waiting for something. A shadow passed over the cafe. Looking up through the skylights, they saw a massive hegemony warship hovering over the city. Its weapons were powered but not aimed at anything specific. A show of force, Commodore Thex, Yunji muttered. I should have known he would be personally involved in this. You know him? Jihan asked, still downloading data. We have history. He's the one who killed your squad on Europa Station. Jihan's hands stopped moving for a moment. Then he continued working, but Kira could see the tension in his shoulders. Download complete, he said finally. The sound of aircraft engines came from above. A Federation dropship descended toward the cafe's roof, while at the same time, the hegemony soldiers began moving inward. Time to go, Yunji said. They ran for the back exit as the cafe's front windows exploded inward. Hegemony troops poured in, their weapons ready, but they were too late. The Federation dropship was waiting on the roof, its engines running. They climbed aboard just as plasma bolts began hitting the building around them. As they lifted off, Jihan looked down at the city where he had tried to build a quiet life. That life was over now, but looking at Kira beside him, her skin showing determined gold, and at Yunji coordinating their escape, he realized he was not sorry. His friends had died protecting something important. Now he had a chance to finish what they started. The real test was just beginning. The Federation dropship carried them to a military base hidden in the mountains outside Neo-Seoul. Jihan had never seen the facility before, but he could tell it was designed for operations that the public was not supposed to know about. Welcome to Site 7, Yunji said, as they walked through corridors lined with both human and alien technology. This is where we coordinate our architect research. The base was busy with activity. Scientists and soldiers from a dozen different species worked together on projects that Jihan could only guess at. He saw Vorthak quantum computers connected to human neural networks and weapons that seemed to bend light around themselves. How long has this been going on? He asked. Since we found the first architect site. The Federation leadership realized we needed a special task force to handle this technology, something that could work outside normal political channels. They entered a briefing room where a holographic display showed the Kepler system. Red markers indicated hegemony ships moving toward the moon where the architect facility waited. The situation is worse than I thought, Yunji said, studying the display. Thex has brought a full battle fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, support vessels, and troop transports. He's planning a major assault. How long before they reach the facility? Kira asked. 36 hours, assuming they maintain current speed. Jihan looked at the tactical display. What do we have to stop them? 1 stealth ship, a crew of 12, and the hope that the architect facility will only open for the right people. Yunji turned to face them. Which brings us to our next problem. The data you downloaded shows that accessing the facility requires a bonding process between a human and a Vorthak. Not just working together, but actual neural linking. Kira's skin shifted to worried blue. What kind of linking? According to your husband's notes, it's similar to the deep connection rituals that some Vorthak couples use. But instead of just sharing emotions, you would share memories, experiences, even some thought processes. The connection would be permanent. Jihan felt his stomach tighten. And if we're not compatible? The process could kill you both, or worse, leave you trapped in each other's minds forever. The room was quiet for a moment. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the base preparing for action. There has to be another way, Jihan said. There isn't. Yunji pulled up another section of the data. The architect facility is designed to only respond to truly bonded pairs. Your husband figured that out, Kira. That's why he set up the security system the way he did. He was preparing you for this choice. Kira looked at the data, her skin cycling through several colors as she processed the information. Deho knew he might not survive to see the facility opened. He was preparing me to find someone else who could complete the mission. Someone he could trust, Jihan realized. That's why he moved to our building. He researched the other tenants and decided I was the best option. A former soldier with the right technical skills and no political connections, Yunji agreed. Someone who would help for the right reasons, not for power or money. An alarm started sounding throughout the base. Red lights flashed in the corridors. What's happening? Kira asked. Yunji was already checking her communicator. Hegemony attack on Neo-Sol. They're not waiting for us to come to them. The holographic display changed to show the city they had just left. Hegemony ships were descending from orbit, while ground forces moved through the streets. But this was not a random attack. They were targeting specific locations. They're hitting all the major spaceports, Yunji said, and the Federation Embassy District. Thex is trying to prevent us from reaching the Architect facility. How many people? Jihan asked, watching explosions bloom across the city map. Too many. The local defense forces are putting up a fight, but they're outnumbered. Jihan stared at the display, thinking about all the innocent people caught in the middle of this conflict. Humans, Vorthax, and other species who just wanted to live their lives in peace. We need to stop this, he said. We need to reach the facility, Yunji corrected. If the hegemony gets that technology, what's happening in Neo-Sol will happen to every world in the Federation. No. Jihan turned away from the display. There has to be a better way. Some way to end this without more people dying. Kira moved closer to him. What are you thinking? The bonding process. If we do it here before we leave, we might be able to learn something from the partial connection. Something that could help us understand what the architects really wanted. Yunji shook her head. Too dangerous. If something goes wrong, we lose our only chance to access the facility. And if we wait, we might not get there at all. Jihan looked at Kira. It's your choice, but I think your husband was right. The architects weren't just testing individual species. They were testing our ability to truly work together. Kira was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through several colors. Finally, it settled on determined gold. Let's do it, she said. The bonding chamber was a small room lined with neural interface equipment designed for interspecies communication. Yunji and her medical team prepared the connections while Jihan and Kira sat facing each other. Remember, the doctor said, this is not a full bonding. We're just establishing a basic neural link. If you feel any pain or disorientation, we'll disconnect immediately. Jihan felt the neural interface helmet settle over his head. Across from him, Kira was connected to a similar device calibrated for Vorthak brain patterns. Ready? The doctor asked. They both nodded. The connection started slowly. At first, Jihan just felt a strange tingling sensation. Then gradually he became aware of another presence in his mind. Not thoughts exactly, but emotions and impressions that were definitely not his own. Curiosity, determination, grief for a lost husband, and underneath it all a deep well of hope that somehow things could get better. Kira's presence in his mind felt warm and oddly familiar, like coming home after a long journey. Then the memories started sharing. Jihan saw flashes of Kira's life, her childhood on a Vorthak colony world, studying ancient ruins with her parents, her excitement at finding her first architect artifact, meeting Deho at a dig site on Europa Station, their wedding where both human and Vorthak customs were honored. In return, Kira experienced his memories. Military training, the camaraderie of his squad, the horror of the hegemony attack that killed his friends, his decision to leave the military and try to find peace. But the most surprising thing was how their different ways of thinking began to complement each other. Kira's pattern-based reasoning helped Jihan see connections he had missed, while his logical approach gave structure to her intuitive leaps. Something's happening, the doctor said. The neural patterns are stabilizing in a way we've never seen before. Suddenly, both Jihan and Kira gasped at the same time. Through their shared connection, they were seeing something else. A vision of the architect facility, but not as it appeared in the data files. They saw it as it truly was. A vast network of consciousness, waiting for the right minds to activate it. Not a weapon or a tool, but a gift, the power to reshape reality, but only for those who could prove they would use it wisely. The architects had not been testing individual species. They had been waiting for the moment when different species could truly unite, sharing not just resources or technology, but understanding and trust. The test, Kira whispered, still deep in the connection. It's not about being worthy. It's about being ready. Ready for what? Jihan asked. The answer came to both of them at the same time, through the shared understanding that only true bonding could provide, ready to become something new, something better than what any species could achieve alone. The neural link stabilized, and the doctors confirmed what Jihan and Kira already knew. The bonding had worked perfectly. They were still themselves, but now they were also something more. We need to go, Jihan said, standing up. The facility is waiting for us. Outside, the battle for Neo-Soul continued to rage. But now they had a chance to end it, not through superior firepower, but through the one thing the hegemony could never understand: unity. The stealth ship Harmony slipped through space like a shadow, invisible to most sensors. Jihan sat in the co-pilot seat, feeling strange in the Federation uniform they had given him. Beside him, Kira monitored the approach to Kepler 442c, through instruments that combined human and Vorthak technology. Through their neural bond, he could feel her excitement mixed with nervousness. The moon ahead looked dead and empty, but the architect facility hidden beneath its surface was already responding to their presence. Hegemony fleet is still 12 hours out, Captain Yunji reported from the command deck. We should have enough time to access the facility and figure out what we're dealing with. But as they entered orbit around the moon, their sensors detected something unexpected. The hegemony had not waited for their main fleet. A single ship was already there, landed near the facility entrance. That's Commodore Thex's personal cruiser, Yunji said grimly. He must have pushed his engines beyond safe limits to get here first. Through the bond, Jihan felt Kira's worry spike. If Thex was already inside the facility, they might be too late. Can we land without being detected? Jihan asked. The facility is interfering with sensors on both sides. We can get close, but once we're on the ground, we'll be committed. They landed about 2 kilometers from the facility entrance in a crater that hid their ship from direct observation. The surface of the moon was airless and cold, so they wore environment suits for the walk to the architect's site. The facility entrance was unlike anything Jihan had ever seen. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves that seemed to flow naturally from the moon's surface. Strange symbols covered the walls, and a soft blue light emanated from somewhere deep inside. The symbols are changing, Kira observed through the comm system. They're responding to our presence. As they approached, the entrance opened silently. Inside, they found corridors that defied physics. The walls seemed to bend space somehow, making the facility feel much larger than it could possibly be. They also found bodies. Hegemony soldiers, Yunji said, examining the nearest one. But look at this. No wounds, no signs of violence. They just stopped. Jihan knelt beside another body. The soldier's face was peaceful, almost content. It's like they fell asleep. The facility is selective about who it allows inside, Kira said. Your husband's notes mentioned something about this. The architects built safeguards to prevent the wrong people from reaching the core. They continued deeper into the facility, following corridors that seemed to guide them toward their destination. The further they went, the more bodies they found. An entire hegemony assault team, all peacefully unconscious. Where's Thex? Yunji wondered. They found him in the central chamber, standing before a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. Unlike his soldiers, he was awake, but he seemed frozen in place. Commodore, Yunji called out. Thex turned slowly. His eyes were wide, and his usual commanding presence was gone. He looked like someone who had seen something that shattered his understanding of the universe. It won't work, he said quietly. I've been trying for hours. The system responds to me, recognizes my thoughts, but it won't activate. Because you're alone, Kira said. The architects designed this for cooperation, not domination. Cooperation, Thex laughed bitterly. My species conquered half the galaxy through strength and determination. We don't need cooperation. That's exactly why you can't access the system, Jihan said. The architects weren't looking for the strongest or the smartest. They were looking for wisdom. The crystalline structure pulsed brighter as Jihan and Kira approached it together. Through their bond, they could feel the ancient intelligence within, vast and patient and kind. Stop, Thex ordered, raising his weapon. That technology belongs to the strong. To those who can use it properly. Use it for what? Jihan asked. More conquest. More death? For order, for peace through strength. That's not peace, Kira said sadly. That's just fear wearing a different name. Thex fired his weapon, but the energy bolt simply disappeared as it hit the chamber's walls. The facility had decided he was a threat and was protecting its visitors. Jihan and Kira placed their hands on the crystal together. Immediately, the entire facility came alive with light and sound. Through their bond, they felt the architect consciousness awakening fully for the first time in millions of years. Welcome, the voice spoke directly into their minds. You have passed the tests. You understand what we were looking for. Images flooded their consciousness. The history of the architects. A species that had achieved incredible power but learned the hard way that strength without wisdom led only to destruction. They had built these facilities as gifts for younger species, but only for those who could prove they were ready. The technology you seek can reshape matter and energy at the quantum level, the architect consciousness explained. It can heal worlds, create new forms of life, even extend existence beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. But it cannot be used for conquest or control. It responds only to unity, compassion, and the desire to create rather than destroy. Show us, Jihan said. The chamber filled with light as the architect's systems fully activated. Jihan felt knowledge flowing into his mind. Not just technical specifications, but understanding. How to use matter converters to heal damaged ecosystems. How to create sustainable energy that wouldn't harm living beings. How to build faster-than-light ships that worked in harmony with space-time, rather than forcing their way through it. But most importantly, he understood the choice they now faced. We could keep this for ourselves, he said to Kira through their bond. Use it to make humanity the dominant species in the galaxy. Or we could share it, she replied. The way the architects intended. They looked at Commodore Thex, who was watching them with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. The choice is simple, Jihan said aloud. We can use this technology to continue the old pattern of conquest and competition. Or we can start something new. He turned to address the architect consciousness. We want to share this knowledge with all species who prove ready for it. Not just humans and Vorthax, but everyone who can pass the tests. That is wisdom, the consciousness replied with obvious pleasure. The knowledge will be available to all who approach with the right intentions, but it will remain locked away from those who seek only power. The facility's systems began broadcasting across the galaxy, sending the location and access codes to every species' scientific community. The knowledge would be freely available, but only to those who could work together to claim it. No, Thex screamed, rushing toward the crystal. You don't understand. Without strong leadership, the galaxy will tear itself apart. But as he touched the crystal, his anger simply melted away. The architect consciousness touched his mind, showing him a different path. Not domination, but cooperation. Not fear, but hope. Thex collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I never considered there could be another way. There's always another way, Jihan said gently. We just have to be brave enough to choose it. The facility's broadcast was reaching across space now, and responses were already coming back. Scientists and diplomats from dozens of species all asking the same questions. How, when, where? Through their bond, Jihan and Kira felt the future unfolding, new alliances forming, old enemies discovering common ground, species that had never met learning to work together toward shared goals. It would not be easy. There would still be conflicts, still be those who chose force over cooperation, but now there was an alternative. A path toward something better. What happens now? Captain Yunji asked. Now we go home, Jihan said. We help our people understand what we've learned. We teach them that strength isn't about being better than others, but about making others better alongside us. The architect consciousness was withdrawing now, its job complete. But before it faded entirely, it left them with one final gift. The knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. That somewhere among the stars, other species were taking their first steps toward wisdom. And that the future, despite all its challenges, was bright with possibility. As they walked back through the facility toward their ship, Jihan felt Kira's contentment through their bond. Her husband's sacrifice had not been in vain. The research he died protecting had become the foundation for a new age of cooperation. Behind them, Commodore Thex walked quietly beside Captain Yunji. his entire worldview transformed by what he had experienced. The hegemony fleet that was still approaching would find their commander changed, ready to negotiate rather than conquer. "Do you think it will work?" Kira asked as they boarded the Harmony. "Will species really choose cooperation over conflict?" "Some will," Jihan replied, "and those who do will help convince the others. Change takes time, but it does happen." As their ship lifted off from the moon, they could see other vessels approaching in the distance. Not warships, but scientific vessels from a dozen different species, all coming to learn what the architects had left behind. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. And humanity, by choosing to share rather than hoard the greatest discovery in galactic history, had proven they deserved to be part of that change.